About 10 years ago, my wife and I lived in a small apartment complex on the other side of town. We were newly married, and this was our first place together. It was nothing special, but we were proud of it. We moved in and within a few days met most of the neighbors around us. Everyone seemed nice, although some weren't social birds like us. A couple weeks into living there, my wife and I noticed how loud the neighbors directly above us would be. There would be loud stomps and thumps and muffled yelling sometimes. This was going on mostly at night, late at night, like 1 to 2 a.m., while we were trying to sleep. For a week or so, we just did our best to ignore it, and figured it was kinda what we signed up for in getting an apartment. Eventually, it just became too much. This night was worse than ever, non-stop yelling and thumping sounds. I couldn't take it anymore and went upstairs to the neighbor's door at about 2 a.m. and knocked on the door. A younger man opened the door, clearly annoyed that I was there. I asked him as nicely as possible if they could please quiet down, as I had to be at work early in the morning. He didn't say anything for about 5 seconds, then he just said sure, then shut the door. I was pissed, but it was whatever. I had to try and get some sleep regardless. Surprisingly, the noises from upstairs had completely stopped, and I was actually able to get some form of sleep. The next day I came back from work, and there were about 5 police cars and an ambulance in the apartment parking lot. There were police and paramedics coming out of the apartment directly above mine. I didn't get many details on what was going on at the time because police were pushing people away, but one of my other neighbors had the full story. In the apartment above me, there was a couple living up there. The man, who I approached the night prior about the noise, had apparently beaten his girlfriend nearly to death the night prior after an argument. To think that I knocked on their door likely right after this had happened is pretty scary to me. We moved out of that complex a couple years later and have since bought a house. This event still sometimes pops back up in my mind. In many ways, you'll never really know your neighbors. A recent series of events involving my neighbor have left me with many questions and wondering what I should do. I've lived in the same house my whole life, always had the same neighbors as well for the most part, and I never noticed anything unusual until a couple months ago. I've lately started staying up super late into the night for whatever reason. I'm just a night owl, I guess, and usually don't go to bed till at least 4 a.m. Anyways, since I started this bad habit, I've noticed weird noises coming from the direction of the neighbor's house. It sounded like someone was doing some sort of construction over there at first. This isn't super weird in of itself, except the fact that it only happened at like 2 a.m. It was so loud some nights that I could hear it all the way in my basement, basically on the other side of the house. This went on for a few weeks. Some nights there was nothing, and some nights the noise was almost unbearable. One night, when it was super loud, I snuck outside and into the small patch of trees behind the neighbor's house. His garage door was wide open, and he was clearly building something or fixing something on some type of workbench. I was too far away to get super specific details, but again, this was like almost 3 in the morning. I decided against approaching him and just went back to my house. Well, fast forward a couple nights, and it was around 2 a.m. again, and I was looking outside the window for whatever reason. There were no garage lights or noises coming from the neighbor this night. Still, I noticed something a little weird. It was dark, but it definitely looked like the neighbor was doing something in his yard. It kinda looked like he was digging a hole in his backyard. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to go outside again and snoop around a little bit. Except this time, I wasn't careful enough. Just as I was walking from my driveway over behind his yard, the motion sensor light above my garage came on. The neighbor saw it and subsequently saw me standing in the yard. He just stared at me with a blank expression. I asked what he was doing, and he just responded nothing in a harsh, seemingly annoyed tone. I just said okay and walked back inside. I really didn't know what to do at that point, so I kind of just left it alone. The next morning, I walked over to the property line between his yard and mine again, and saw there were leaves covering up the spot where I saw him digging last night. Ever since this night, every interaction I have with him is awkward. It's always like he's just staring at me with no emotions. Our previous interactions were never this way, so this was obviously a red flag. At this point, I'm concerned I caught him doing something that he didn't want anyone to know about, and that fact that I caught him has him on edge. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but who goes digging in their yard at 3 a.m. unless they're trying to hide something? If anything else becomes of this, I will give an update. I live in a duplex with a friend. It's just a part-time situation for now while I finish up college. We moved in just before the semester started. It's nothing special, but it fits both of our needs just being college students. We met our next door neighbors almost immediately. There were 2 older ladies living there. They were a little weird first impression, to be honest. I was kinda hoping we would have some cool college-aged people next to us so that we can make new friends. It was safe to say that we would be keeping to ourselves. I'm not sure what it was about one of the ladies in particular, but she kinda creeped me out. She seemed kinda off, but I don't know how to explain it any other way than that. This had to be our second or third night in there. It was in the middle of the night, and I was fast asleep. I'm kinda a light sleeper, so any noise that's somewhat loud will usually wake me up. Well, that's what happened in this case. I could have sworn I heard a door opening. It didn't sound like a bedroom door, but sort of sounded like the front door. I got up and went into the hallway to see if my roommate, Daniel, was up for some reason. I called his name a few times, but got no response. I turned the corner in the hallway that leads to the kitchen and noticed the door that separates our side of the duplex from the other was wide open. My heart was kinda racing now. There was absolutely no reason why that door should have been opened, and I know Daniel wouldn't have opened it. I walked slowly further into the hallway and into the kitchen, still calling for Daniel softly. I got to the kitchen and saw the lady from next door sitting in one of our kitchen table chairs. I froze. She looked up at me but didn't say a word. She just stared at me for about 10 seconds and nothing happened. Then she let out the most loud, ear-piercing scream I've ever heard. Daniel came running in, and so did the other lady from next door. She grabbed her and started pulling her back to their side. She apologized probably about 100 times, but I was still not happy with the fact that this lady just walked into our side of the duplex. Of course, we should have locked the door from our side in the first place, but it never really crossed our minds at the time. We still live there, at least for now, and we rarely ever see the people next door anymore. The door separating the 2 sides is always locked from our side, and we even put a bookshelf blocking the door to prevent anything like that from happening again.